In 2024, NIL is the name of the game in college football, and to argue otherwise is futile. It really, honestly, truly is the way to recruit and attract talent to your programs. And I understand fully that coaches wish it wasn't that way. They wish that it was the old days where you recruit 18-year-old kids to come into your program, maybe develop them, watch them grow into potential NFL draft picks and guys who are going to go on to represent your program really, really well in the future. I wholly understand that that is the preferable way to do it. But the game has changed, and you can either adapt or die. I don't know if you've seen the analysis that kind of go hand in hand with NIL, that the transfer portal and NIL are the way to operate in 2024. And there were four college football programs that did not accept a transfer. Division I college football programs. They did not accept a transfer in the transfer portal in 2024. Army, Navy, Air Force, and Clemson. 3 of the 4 can't really accept transfers, and one of them won't. And in a similar vein, you see guys that do get in the transfer portal go to new universities, go to new colleges, and get a big NIL bag. It's the name of the game in 2024. If you're going to build your roster into a championship caliber program with talent, NIL goes hand in hand with doing that. And yet, there are some people who haven't adapted or are still kind of talking about how much they dislike the way the system operates right now. And LSU head coach Brian Kelly is one of them. And he gave it's an illuminating interview because I think he says some of the things that he truly means, believes, and feels. And I'm on the record of saying I think college coaches should do exactly that. If you think it, say it. And if you say it, mean it. And I think he does that in this clip that I'm about to play for you. I think he does all of those things. And I think he has a pretty good view on what he's saying. But there is one specific area that either he's ignorant's a strong word. He's ignorant of or is trying to draw more money out of the NIL collective community in Baton Rouge. He was asked about the status of LSU's defensive line, that they maybe aren't up to snuff, and that he flat out says, hey, we were looking for them in the transfer portal, and it didn't go to plan because of the way the portal operates nowadays. And he kind of decries how that process plays out these days. So this is Brian Kelly on WFAB TV down in Louisiana. And I want you to pay attention to what he has to say here during this short little snippet.
Well, I think I made it pretty clear in a number of the press conferences that I had that we were in the market in recruiting in the transfer portal looking for defensive linemen. It hasn't fared very well, quite frankly, because we're selling something a little bit differently, and that is we want to recruit. We want to engage, build relationships. We want to develop, retain, and have success. We're not in the market of buying players, and unfortunately, right now, that's what some guys are looking for. They want to be bought. And look, I understand NIL is part of this, and we have an incredible collective. We have very, very generous opportunities around the greater Baton Rouge area for NIL opportunities. So they are here, but we're not going to go out and buy players. That's not what this is about. This was never about that. We will develop you. We will get you ready for the next step, as we did with Jaden Daniels, as we did with Malik Neighbors, as we did with Brian Thomas. We developed 3 defensive linemen that all got drafted this year, and we'll do that again. But if you're just looking to get paid, you're looking in the wrong place.
Why isn't Brian Kelly the head coach at Grand Valley State anymore? Why isn't Brian Kelly the head coach at Central Michigan, Cincinnati, Notre Dame? Why is it okay for Brian Kelly to want to chase money, but not for players? Brian Kelly won national championships as the head coach at Grand Valley State in Michigan. Why didn't Brian Kelly stay at Cincinnati or at Notre Dame or Central Michigan? Why not? Why didn't he develop himself at those programs? Why didn't he stay and fight the good fight in those areas, try to win a national championship? Why did he go to the university that he chose? There's two reasons. They gave him more money, and they gave him a better opportunity. Now, why is that okay for Brian Kelly to do as an adult? But a college football player there's a tone there of being chastised. There's a tone there of having their priorities crooked. That they shouldn't just be looking out for the highest dollar amount. And this is a table that I will continue to pound. Why is it that damn near every American does the job that they do, and the second that they could make more money doing a similar job somewhere else, the overwhelming majority would take it? But then when college football players do it, it's the end of days. Oh my gosh, this could be the decline of the sport. I've just lost interest in the sport because these damn kids are making money. It doesn't track. Brian Kelly is the head coach at LSU, which is vastly different than being the head coach at Central Michigan or Cincinnati or Notre Dame. You can argue at those places why you couldn't finish the deal. At LSU, there is no explanation. There are no excuses for why you couldn't finish the deal. The three coaches ahead of you, or I guess not ahead of you, the three past coaches of that university all won national championships. And if you don't, it's not a systematic issue. It's not a conference issue. It's not a town issue. It's not a location issue. It's not an academic issue. It's a you issue. Brian Kelly can't complete the task at LSU. If he can't get over the finish line, whether that's after a 16-game season or recruiting defensive linemen out of the transfer portal, the excuses are not, it's everybody else's fault but mine. It's him. It's his fault. It's your failure. And so if you can't get defensive linemen out of the transfer portal, it's not the NIL collective's fault. It's not the defensive line coach, defensive coordinator, the recruiting assistant's fault. At the end of the day, the buck has to stop somewhere, and that has to be with Brian Kelly. You are playing with a whole new different playing field. This is the SEC. It's really, really, really big boy football. And if you can't if you can't convince some defensive line recruit to, instead of going to college X, come to LSU, where you're right, you have put defensive linemen in the NFL year after year after year after year. It's not the kid's fault. It's not the NIL collective's fault. It's not the NCAA's fault. It's not anybody else's fault than yours. The idea that we're not in the industry of buying players. Yeah, you are. That is the business that you operate in now. And if that's the way the game has changed, and if you haven't adapted to that, there's not a ton of hope that LSU is going to flip that bad boy around and be a national title contender if you have your head coach saying we're not buying players. Yeah, you are. Because if everybody else around you is, because if that's what matters to the players, that has to matter to you, because that's the name of the game, is getting the best players. The crowd that says, oh, well, star rankings don't matter. Yeah, they do. That's about the only thing that does matter, is who has the best players, who can tally and hoard the best players in America. And do you know what the best players in America understand? Their worth. They understand that there is now a market in place that they can get hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. And then you have a coach of a major university, of what should be a major power player in college football, saying, that's just not how we operate. Well, one, either that's not how you operate because you haven't been successful at it and you would have to confront that you're not successful at it. Or two, it's just ignorance. It's pure jackassery because that is the business that you are now in. Recruiting has always been it's essentially a sales job. And for you to have either a fundamental misunderstanding of that's the job, or you haven't done a great job at it, and that would be admitting it, that, hey, you know what, we haven't gotten the job done. Neither one of those is a great option. But to say, well, that's just not how we operate, we want to do it the old-fashioned way, that's great. Enjoy your drop to a mid-tier program in the SEC like Clemson in the ACC because you refuse to adapt. Have fun sitting on the sidelines, collecting a paycheck, not sitting on the literal sidelines, sitting on the metaphorical sidelines, getting a paycheck from LSU because they fired your ass because you didn't understand the business that you operate in 2024. It's about two things: NIL, transfer portal. You're trying to work in the transfer portal, and I give you kudos for that because you recognize that avenue. But to say we're not in the business of buying players, if you are working out of the transfer portal, yes, you are. And to not understand that is malpractice. And I think Brian Kelly's smarter than that. He has nobody to blame but himself if they are not finishing the deal in the transfer portal or recruiting top-end defensive line talent. But that's not a very popular answer now, is it? That might illuminate that I have a flaw somehow, and there are just some people who operate in a manner that would lead you to believe that they have no flaws. It's never their fault. I think Brian Kelly's one of them. And I think it's a really disappointing thing to see that somebody who has been tasked with leading a really important program to that state, to that conference, to the college football landscape, to then argue, well, we're not in the business of buying players. No college coach believes that they're in the business of buying players because you want to believe that our ability to develop young players, our facilities, our academics, whatever the case may be, is what led to that player choosing my program, rather than we put three numbers in front of the comma in their NIL and they said, yep, sounds good. Because that doesn't feed the ego. That doesn't make you more powerful. It doesn't make you a god on campus anymore. It makes the people giving you money the authority figures, the power, the gods on campus. And so there's this internal power struggle that coaches want to continue to have. And I understand it to a point, but at the same time, being successful and kicking ass sure is a lot more fun than being powerful, being right, having people indebted to you. I just don't understand the idea that, well, we're not in the business of buying players. Well, nobody's in the business of buying players if you were to ask them. But you know what? Everybody sure enjoys having really good players in 2024. And you know how you do it? Transfer portal, NIL. And to only pretend that one of those is a real above-the-board way to get players is poppycock. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. I appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content that we're pumping out here on Saturday Glory. If you are listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle here on Saturday Glory.